course, for IELTS, we all know that IELTS stands for the International English Language Testing System, and it's administered. Next slide. It's administered for a number of purposes. In certain cases, people want to migrate to another country, or to study for a master's program, or to get a job. And in all those cases, either IELTS, academic or general tests are preferred or are requested. There are four main sections for the IELTS program, and which include listening, reading, writing, and speaking. I'll go into details about each of these modules and exactly what the requirements are and how we plan to conduct this course, so that you can get an idea of how you will be able to achieve the necessary skills you need to achieve the band that you want within each of these modules. One point that I'd like to clarify is that often there is a question about the academic IELTS and the general IELTS, and sometimes when people are applying, then they can, it can cause a bit of confusion. The academic IELTS exam is usually requested by universities when anyone is applying to pursue an academic field. The general IELTS exam is often requested for immigration purposes, or if someone chooses to gain employment elsewhere. But I mean, that's not always the case. There is also a separate program which is called a UK Life Skills program. The details for that are available on the British Council website. But that is a separate exam that is administered. The course that we're going to be conducting here is going to focus on the IELTS, academic and general, and I will go to the details about exactly what the difference is between both of these tests. This is a very useful link, and for any student who decides to continue with this course, you will not only get this presentation, but each presentation after every class that is conducted. And this is a very useful link which I usually share, so that when anyone is applying for to an institution, either for an academic program or for immigration purposes, at least they'll have an idea of whether the institution they want to apply for actually accepts IELTS, and then those institutions usually define the band that they require any applicant to fulfill for IELTS. So if we can move to the next slide. As I mentioned, IELTS program is co-owned by three different entities, the British Council, IDP, and Cambridge University presence. It's not the exclusive ownership of just British Council. But the British Council, I think, has the largest set of test centers in Pakistan, and this is just one example. If you want to register for it and book your exam, this is one of the links that will give a detailed list of the availability of places in specific test centers and specific dates. And then you can judge according to whenever you need to do the program or whenever you need to sit for the exam, which test center, which date you should do the booking for. But I'd just like to add that the reason I wanted to share these links is because IELTS is offered as a computer-based exam and as a paper-based exam. So a student can decide whichever exam they wish to take. However, it is at this stage when you're booking your exam that you will have to make that decision. So it's best to know a little in advance and be a little bit prepared. If you prefer a paper-based exam, then choose a test location where a paper-based exam will be administered, because not all of the test centers in Pakistan have the computer-based system available. But we can go into those details. If you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer those. As I mentioned earlier, the academic in general exam for IELTS are slightly different only in the area of reading and writing. And the listening and speaking sections are exactly the same, and the duration of the exam is exactly the same. There is just a slight difference in the content of the reading section and of the writing section. However, they are both for 60 minutes each. So it's not as if one is easier than the other, or one is, one requires less work than the other. The format is such that when the test is administered, you usually have to, the duration of the test consists of the listening, reading and writing sections at the same time on the same day. And so that is done with breaks given in between, but it takes over 2 hours, 45 minutes, about 3 hours is how long it will take you to complete that portion. The speaking part of it, all test centers offer this facility where the speaking exam can be taken on another day, perhaps a week earlier or a week afterwards, but they give you that margin. So that is something to keep in mind. And the speaking exam, I'll go into the details of it on the next slide. But the speaking exam is a live one-to-one interaction with an examiner. So on this one, I'd like to review the test format with you so that you get an idea of exactly what each module is. If we can just go a little bit lower on this page, please. Oh, and that's a little bit high there. So, as you can see, this is the official website for IELTS. There is a lot of information online which you can always access on your own. So I don't want to go into too many of the details because it becomes confusing for anyone. I just want to give you an overview of exactly what the each section requires and what the format is for each section, and I think that will give you enough of a preview so that you can prepare and know how to prepare yourself for each section. And then in the next slide, we look at how we're going to build the skills for each section and each module. So for listening, it typically takes 30 minutes. There are 4 different recordings, and the most important thing to remember about the listening section and the reason that it needs to be practiced consistently is because in the IELTS exam, every recording is played only once. So if you're not listening attentively, you will miss hearing perhaps a keyword that is required. So the first recording is usually a conversation between 2 people. It's usually a casual conversation, somebody buying a train ticket or maybe going into a grocery store. The second one is a monologue. A monologue is just means one person speaking. And again, that can be maybe a librarian giving a speech about, in the library or describing what facilities they have. The third recording is a little more challenging than the first 2 because it can be a conversation of up to 4 people. And during that recording, the reason that this I say is a little bit more challenging is because, for example, if you have a university tutor and you are dealing with and you're listening to a recording where that university tutor is engaging in a conversation with 4 students, those 4 students can be from 4 different countries and they will have different accents. And the key to scoring highly on a listening skills test for IELTS is the ability to be able to recognize different accents and their pronunciation. Because as you know, in a lot of English-speaking countries, whether it's Canada, New Zealand, the UK, the United States, Australia, they're all English-speaking countries. However, they all have very different accents. And the pronunciation is very different. So that's just one of the skills that one has to practice during the listening exercise, is to be able to recognize those accents and then make a note of them. The last recording is again a monologue, which is just one person speaking, and it's usually on an academic subject, it could be a university lecture, and so during the course of that, you get the chance to pay attention to keywords and then note down the areas that you need to remember. One of the advantages that the IELTS exam has is that you are allowed to read the questions before each recording, and that helps any student because once you look at the questions, you get some idea of what you need, where you need to look, what kind of answers you need to listen for. And another very important point that I'd like to mention here is, if you go all the way down this page, the listening section is not just about listening. There is an answer sheet in which you have to write down the answers. And if there is any incorrect spelling or grammar, you're penalized for it. So it's essential that when you practice the listening exercise, just like any of the other modules, there should always be attention to correct spellings and correct grammar, because there is no guarantee that even if you heard the right word, if you misspelled it, you won't get the mark for it. Moving on to academic reading. The academic reading section again is for 60 minutes. The test is for 60 minutes, and it has 40 questions. So keeping that in mind, it is always best to, there are 3 reading passages. It's always best to try and practice techniques where you can read fast enough so that you can read all of the 3 passages, but also that you underline keywords and in certain cases, so that you can basically get an idea of what the main idea in each paragraph is that will help you answer the questions that follow. Because within 60 minutes, when you have 40 questions, and in 60 minutes you not only have to read that entire sort of content, but then you have to answer those questions as well. And there are different types of questions. It can be multiple choice questions, it can be match the headings, and the details of those are available. But the main thing to remember is that, whenever, even for people who are very good at English and have grown up in English-speaking countries, even they will find the IELTS test challenging if they cannot practice, because it's a timed exam. And that's the critical determinant which will help you. As long as you are consistent with time practice, I think this is a very scoring, it's an area where you can score higher marks, because in the reading sections and in the listening sections, because of the scores, as the raw score can be converted to a band, you get an idea of exactly which band you fall in. If we can move on to general training, as I said, there's not much difference. The general training is for, again, 60 minutes. The time is exactly the same. And again, there are 40 questions. The only difference is that there is a difference in the content of the material that you're given to read. So, if anybody is doing a general test, as you can see here, it's mainly so that the examiner can assess how well you'll be able to function in an English-speaking environment. If we can move on to academic writing, when we look at the writing, whether it's general or whether it is academic, in both cases, it will be 60 minutes. But for the academic writing, you have two tasks. The first task, you have to write a minimum of 150 words. In this case, because it's academic, the test can display either a graph or a table or a flow chart, perhaps, and you may be asked to explain the data, describe exactly what the trends are, and then after you've completed that, you have your description of the process, and you have to do it within a minimum of 150 words, and you have a total of 60 minutes for this. So the best recommendation is to not spend more than 20 minutes on the first task, because the greater weightage for marks is in task 2. Task 2, you will be asked to write an essay in response to either a point of view or an argument or perhaps a problem, and you can be told, how would you solve this, or how, in your opinion, how would you approach it. The important thing to remember is that the essay is marked according to criteria where to see how well your answer is presented in a clear, logical, coherent, and grammatically correct manner. So when you have 250 words to write and you have to make sure that it's done in a coherent manner, the best way to approach it is spend no longer than 20 minutes on the first task and then 40 minutes on the second task. And if we can just go a little bit lower, these will give you, when you go onto this website, this will give you an idea of the details of the tasks and the kind of criteria, the assessment criteria that examiners are looking for. However, during the course of these sessions that we conduct, you will get an idea once we start doing writing practice exercises, and it will give you an idea of not only the best way, since there is no scoring as there was in reading and listening, the best way to judge what band or what level you are at and what you would like to reach is to review the model answers that are given with examiner comments. And if we can go to that, this is an actual past paper in the student's handwriting. And if we go a little bit lower, what you'll be able to see is that this is an examiner's comment, and it specifies exactly what the band is. And if you could go a little bit lower, for those students who need to, this is again another academic writing sample, and if you can just go lower, what you'll see is that they give model samples for almost all the bands. So 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. And this is the best way when we are practicing, and this is how we're going to build our writing skills, to see what the model answers were, because that's the best indication for us when we are attempting any practice exam, to see what the examiner expects from us in terms of a writing sample. So if we go back to that gives you an idea of academic writing. Similarly, with general training writing, again, those were models, sort of answers for academic samples. There are similar model answers for general writing. And as you can see here, again, it's 60 minutes and then 2 tasks. The main difference is that when we look at the general writing, as you can see here, task 1, often you will be presented with a situation and you may be asked to write a letter. And this can be providing information or explaining the situation. An example that comes up in one of the practice tests, which is common to perhaps the lifestyle of those who live in English-speaking countries is a lot of people own pets, and when they go on holiday, because they're living alone and they live with a pet, they'll often say, "Oh, you know, they need to write a letter for the neighbor and say, can you please feed my pet, and can you please water my plants?" And so these are the kinds of letters or job applications or problems perhaps living in a hostel sort of dormitory and challenges with that. These are the kind of letters that they will ask for in a general writing exam. And in the second task, again, the first one is again not more than 150 words, and they do pay a lot of attention to the word count. And the second one, again, we asked to write an essay in response to either a point of view, an argument, or a problem. And the important thing to remember is whether it's whether you're doing the general exam or the academic one, your opinion is not wrong. It is how well you are able to defend your opinion or explain your stance that is important. So that just needs to be kept in mind. After that, because the speaking exercise is an entirely separate session, it's usually done, if it is done in the facility that was offered by all test centers during COVID, was that students were able to book a speaking session online with the examiner. However, it will still be live one-on-one interaction. So it basically has 3 different sections, and although it only lasts for about 11 to 14 minutes, those are very important minutes, because there has to be enough sort of content in your speech for the examiner to be able to give you a sufficient grade and be able to assess you on the various criteria such as fluency, pronunciation, correct grammar. In the first part, the examiner will ask you general questions about yourself, anything that you can share about your family, your work, your educational background. In the second part, you're given a card with a particular topic and then given a minute to prepare notes on that topic, and then you're requested to speak on that, and the examiner can ask you questions. And then in the third segment, the examiner can build on that topic and perhaps ask you more detailed questions, and that will be a 4 to 5 minute conversation with the examiner. But again, some of the areas that if we can just go a little lower, I just wanted to bring your attention, when you're speaking, this is what the examiner is going to be looking for. What is your level of fluency? And how coherent are you? Can you speak in a well-structured, grammatically correct manner, or are you hesitant and are you having problems trying to create a sentence? Lexical resources, basically just your vocabulary. The examiner will also try and get a sense of how good your vocabulary is and whether the vocabulary that you use is relevant to the topic that you were questioned on. Grammatical range and accuracy, and as I've mentioned earlier, spelling and grammar are 2 fundamental skills that hopefully through the duration of this course, we will help you build those skills. And of course, pronunciation, because as I mentioned earlier, in the listening section as well, there will be recordings with people speaking in several different accents, and they are all English speakers. However, their pronunciation of the same word can sound very different. So when you are engaging with an examiner, it is very important that that examiner can understand what you are saying and if you are pronouncing all of the words correctly. So now that brings us to an overview of, this is just a link for the various, there are several free online practice tests. But some of these are what I like to share with the students during the course of the program, just so that we can get an idea not just of what kind of tests are available, but we also do these tests together with and then review how well we manage to complete them with the answer keys, so that then we can improve upon our performance, so that by the time the end of the program and it's time for the mock tests, we have managed to sort of master the skills required for each of the components. So just to give you an idea, for this particular course, for this particular IELTS course, and there are 4 modules. This will give you an idea of what we hope and what we're going to be working to achieve with you, so that by the time you finish this course, you will be able to you were to enter into a speaking exercise with any examiner or with any individual for that matter. Your pronunciation will be correct, your sentences will be coherent, and you can confidently speak on any topic. For the listening exercises, the skills that we're going to be practicing and building on are increasing familiarity with different accents and training our ears and our minds to remember the key words that we need. And specifically because each recording is played only once. In the section on reading, what we're going to do is, depending on who needs to do academic and who needs to concentrate on the general exam, we will cover both in this course, and we will practice the reading material so that we build our understanding of topics that may have been previously unfamiliar, but we will also build an ability to be able to answer all 40 of those questions, which are different types of questions, within the specified time limit of 60 minutes. And again, for writing, we will practice writing techniques, looking at practice exams and the model sort of answers that we've seen, so that we can also improve our ability to provide sort of clear, logically and grammatically correct answers. And again, the critical thing is that we have to complete each given task that is given the IELTS exam within the specified time frame. So time management within 60 minutes, hopefully by the end of this course, if whatever cannot be completed at this stage, you will be able to complete it after the end of 30 classes. The way the course is structured is that there will be 30 classes, 30 sessions, and there will be 3 mock exams that will be scheduled towards the end of the course, when before they approach any module. One, given the listening test, always best to read the questions before you hear the test. Use the time effectively that you're given in between each section to prepare for the next section, and also try and identify the kind of information that you need to listen for, because you will have read the question before. For reading, again, there are various techniques. Some of them, these are just examples. There's some known as skimming and scanning. If that helps you identify keywords, this is a technique that we can try and practice. And also, you have to ensure that you are constantly conscious of time, particularly during the reading section, because you only have 60 minutes to do it. Similarly, for writing, one of the key sort of suggestions that I always make to all students is that it's always best to read the question very carefully and plan your answer before writing. It helps create a logical response, and it helps you sort of remain centered in what it is that you want to convey, and your mind doesn't start wandering. Because if your mind starts wandering, then whatever you write will not appear as a logical argument. It's always best to also keep in mind what the examiner wants, and we'll be able to do that when we review the model answers. Logical and clear structure is again one of the key requirements. And as I said earlier, your opinion or your position is never right or wrong. You just have to decide on a position and then use enough examples and evidence to support it. And then for the speaking exercise, some of the skills that really help is before you go into your speaking exercise, whether it's for IELTS or whether it's for any speaking engagement, you should feel confident and relaxed before you go in to sit with your examiner. This is a one-on-one live conversation. You shouldn't, you should not appear to be either nervous or uncomfortable. So enough practice in this course will help you build your confidence skills for that as well. Know what is expected of you, which you'll be able to see in assessment criteria. And again, as I said before, time practice is important. And if you need time to think, these are some of the phrases that always help give you a little bit of time to process your thoughts. So if you're asked a question, you can say, if I think about it or let me see, it will give you a bit of time.